Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is APT Executive Director Wayne Reid and APT External Affairs Director Jack Williams. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making the trip down from Birmingham, appreciate it. We've already reported on this rescissions package, right? That, $9 billion, a lot of that for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Alex reported on it earlier in the show. It's meant for PBS and NPR, but it trickles down to APT. We know that. So Wayne, I wanted to ask you first, how does that work? Talk about the impact financially on APT and how that might play out.
So it's about 70% of that money that comes to CPB goes out to this local station. So for Alabama Public Television, that's about $2.8 million, which we use a majority of those funds to go towards programming, but it's also for infrastructure on how we distribute programming, how programming is distributed to us, music rights fees. There's a lot of different other things that are taken care of for the group, and then it makes it more cost effective for the stations, and why it was set up that way. So we're looking at about $2.8 million that we've got to figure out what we're going to do, and quite honestly, at this point right now, I'm not sure, because we're waiting to get more information back from PBS and from NPR on how they're going to do things going forward. They've got a plan B, they've said. They haven't rolled it out to the stations. It's supposed to come out next week. I think at that point we'll have a better idea of what's going to be available to us and how that would be available to us. There's a lot of other programming that we'll start looking at outside of PBS. But we're going to move forward and do what we do here in Alabama, try to do more local programming, do more stuff with Capitol Journal, whatever we have to do to serve the people of Alabama and keep our mission true to what we do.
Right. Interesting that you mentioned local and state stations, because that is the disparate impact. And I think a lot of folks don't really realize that. They think about NPR, they think about PBS, not necessarily Alabama Public Television, Georgia Public Television, and things like that. Maybe not exactly the aim of Congress, but certainly became the unanticipated target.
Yeah, and the system is so different. There are university licensees, so all of those are done through universities. There's community licensees that are totally funded by community and community support. Most of those are in big markets like New York, Boston, Los Angeles, that type of stuff. And then there's state organizations like Alabama is. And part of the impact of a state organization is it's harder to raise funds to some degree. I mean, we appreciate the funds that people give us in the states, but there's part of the reason that we are funded by the state. We started by the state, and I think that's the interesting thing. People keep asking what's going to happen with PBS. We started way before PBS.
That's right. Alabama Public Television started before public.
15 years before PBS came around. And so we're going to keep doing what we do to serve the state of Alabama, and that's going to be our focus.
Jack, you spent a lot of time in Washington talking with the delegation as this was going through. I'm curious about your message to them, because there's this impact that hits locals differently than it hits the national organization. What has been your conversation with our congressional delegation?
Well, reminded them, Wayne mentioned we're 15 years older than PBS. Alabama Public Television is the original public television network in the country. So I let them know about the history, but I certainly sit down with our members of Congress and remind them that we're not PBS, we're not NPR. We're focused on the state program, our program and things we do at Capitol Journal, our coverage of the State House. Those are things that go away if we go away. Our high school football and basketball, and try and emphasize the value that we provide to their constituents. And by and large, I think our congressional delegation gets it. That was the rescission was basically a party line vote, but I think even some of our Republican members understand the value that we bring, and I'm looking forward to working with them to see ways that we can be helped in the future, maybe even as early as this next budget whenever it's passed.
It's interesting you say that, because I always hear the great feedback from the delegation as well, the Republicans who all voted in favor of this, saying, look, we love APT, but look, it is what it is, which I understand to a certain extent, because you had Trump, you had the president go out there and essentially threaten on social media to say, you're voting for this or else I'm not with you. And look, I mean, the world is what it is, and that's what it is.
Well,
But
Todd, and I would say, Todd, there's a lot of things in the rescission bill that I agree with that we needed to get rid of. Unfortunately, we were packed in there as part of it, but I don't think that part of what they were doing was wrong. I mean, we're $31 trillion in debt. We totally get that. I understand that, and looking to the future for our kids. So it's not like it's a shock to some degree. I mean, things are going to have to be done. We're going to figure out how to get through this, though.
Right, but I'm glad y'all both brought up the whole NPR PBS thing, because that's been frustrating to me as this whole thing. Well, look, we have not put an opinion out about this or anything, but it is frustrating for me because we work hard here at Capital Journal to be fair. I think everybody appreciates that. We try very hard to be right down the middle and just tell the truth. But watching PBS over the years, and especially NPR. I've listened to NPR for years. Used to every morning. Morning edition, all things considered, there is no question that they have drifted pretty far to the left in I'd say the last several years. And so I understand some frustration from members of Congress saying, why in the world should we be funding that? And in some cases, the same is true with PBS, especially with like Washington Week and certain programming. So that's frustrating for me just from our news station perspective. It's got to be frustrating to y'all as you talk to members of Congress.
I'll jump in quick and then I'll let Jack, because he's actually done this a little bit further. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and ever since I came on and we would go to national meetings, one of the things we took to the leadership at NPR and at PBS at every meeting that we went to is we have biased issues and we have biased problems, and it's whether they're in their echo chamber up in New York or Washington and they kind of listen to each other and say, no, we're not. But the problem is, there was a lot of states that would say there's problems that we need to get fixed, and we have pushed that from the state level of Alabama and a lot of other states for several years now since I've been here. And Jack started that crusade even before I did. So,
and Wayne's been very gracious to let me continue on that. But we've actually cobbled together at least 8, and I think it could grow to 12 or 14 state networks that have expressed deep dissatisfaction with how NewsHour programming has been done in Washington Week. I brought this up directly to the CEO of PBS and the CEO of NPR in a panel discussion in February in Washington, D.C.
That's way before this rescission package on the table.
Even since that time, I've had conversations with the chairman of the board for NPR and the chairman of the board for PBS. And I've seen both CEOs this week say there's no bias. And I think as long as they double down on that, it's going to make it more difficult for us to work with with the federal government in the future.
That's interesting. So you're saying that the states, not just Alabama, but several states, sent a message to NPR and PBS that, hey, we really y'all are hurting us. Y'all are threatening us if you keep down this path.
I think my exact words were, you're killing us.
Wow. Well, that kind of says it all. And again, collateral damage a little bit in this. Jack, going forward, you talked about the next budget. This is funding that had already been appropriated. Doesn't mean something in the future can't happen. Do you see a willingness to, or an openness to supporting public, local, and state stations like us rather than the national conglomerate?
I think you have to figure out how, if we do it that way, you got to figure out how do we get the money to the stations. Because that's what CPB is really just a pass through for 70% of this money, and it would be a little silly to just create a new agency to do what CPB does. So CPB plays an important role, but I do think we're very fortunate. The federal budget for public broadcasting starts in the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education subcommittee in the U.S. House of Representatives, chaired by Robert Adderholt from the 4th Congressional District here in Alabama. And
he's one of those who has expressed publicly support of APT.
Yes, he said very kind things about us. Even when he testified before the Rules Committee to bring the rescission package to the floor of the House, he said that Alabama Public Television does a very good job. We're fair, non-biased, and that he was going to find a way to help us. So I think our federal partners want to find ways to help us. We don't know what they are yet.
Well, and Wayne, once you talked about, I want to ask you to once again reassure our audience. We're not going anywhere. This is
No.
reassure us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, we're not going anywhere. We have been funded next year. We're going to have to make some changes. We're going to do everything we can do to minimize those changes, but we're going to figure out a way to keep going. Capital Journal is going to be here. We're still going to have high school football. We're going to bring you the best education programming and other content that we can bring. Some of those content may change from their suppliers of who we're getting them from. Like I said, a lot of that is up in the air right now, but right now we're staying put, and you know, we say it all the time, and people make jokes about viewers like you. It is viewers that actually do fund a lot of what we do. A lot of the programming and stuff is done by viewers. So the support that we've seen pour out over this has been really honoring. I mean, it's very nice that they support us like that, and the state's been very supportive as well. And we try to do everything we can to support state activities. I mean, with what we do when we're in session and what we do with high school sports and through our education department, we're trying to be a huge partner and a resource for the state.
Well said. Gentlemen, it's been a long week. But thank you for enlightening our audience about what's going on. There's been a lot of questions, so thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.